Know the story of Iran's ghost ships, the ones filling its treasury overnight. Why is America helpless? Darkness falls quickly over the sea at night. From above, everything looks calm. A black stretch of water, the dim light of some distant tanker, lines slowly moving across the radar, and on a satellite screen, a ship that suddenly seems to have vanished. But the real story begins right there, because many times, the ship does not actually disappear. It simply hides itself from the eyes of the world. And when such a ship belongs to a country facing the toughest sanctions in the world, then this no longer remains just a shipping story. It becomes a story of money, power, war, survival, and the limits of the global system. Today, this very story revolves around Iran's dark fleet, or if you prefer, its ghost ships. Vessels that, without making noise, without using open banking routes, and without showing up inside the dollar system, are still delivering billions of dollars worth of oil to the market. According to Reuters' detailed report from January 2025, despite sanctions, Iran has not only kept its oil trade alive through a shadow fleet, concealment tactics, and willing buyers in Asia, but has actually made it quite strong. That is exactly why. At a time when tension and war pressure in the Middle East are rising, one big question keeps coming up again and again. How is Iran able to afford all of this? To stand up against powerful rivals like America and Israel, missiles, drones, or rhetoric alone are not enough. Behind that, logistics are needed, foreign exchange is needed, trade routes are needed, financial workarounds are needed. And most importantly, continuous cash flow is needed. This is where the story of these ghost ships moves out of a thriller and becomes a real economy story. Reuters reported in March 2nd, 2026, the Pentagon tried to get the White House to approve a request of more than $200 billion to fund the Iran war. And in April 2nd, 2026, the Trump administration also proposed a record $1.5 trillion defense-heavy budget. That means the conflict is being fought not just on the battlefield but also in the treasury. On the other side, despite having a much smaller economic base, Iran is still able to survive under prolonged pressure, and a big reason for that is believed to be its sanctions evasion networks. Now understand what this dark fleet actually is. These are usually aging tankers, often hidden behind layered ownership structures, registered under foreign flags, keeping insurance arrangements obscure, and confusing tracking systems. According to the March 2nd, 2026 fact sheet of the US-China Economic and Security Review Commission, the shadow fleet carrying Iranian oil uses methods such as foreign flags, switching off AIS transponders, geo-spoofing, and ship-to-ship transfers. That means the ship does not just shut off its signal, sometimes it also tells a false story about its location. In the middle of the sea, one tanker transfers oil to another tanker, the paperwork changes, the cargo's origin identity gets diluted, and then that same oil reaches the buyer under a different label. That is why these are called ghost ships, because inside the system, they are both present and invisible at the same time. Who is the biggest buyer of this oil? The answer is China. Reuters reported in March 2nd, 2026, citing Kepler data, that in 2025 China bought more than 80% of Iran's seaborne oil shipments. The average volume was around 1.38 million barrels per day. This is not some small number. It shows that despite sanctions, Tehran's oil tap has not been shut off completely. In fact, it has built a parallel route for itself. One that appears less in official trade statistics, but is highly effective in market reality. Both Reuters and the Wall Street Journal wrote that China's independent refiners, known as Teapots, buy discounted Iranian crude because they can make margins through cheaper feedstock, and they handle geopolitical risk differently from large state refiners. Now, this is where the story gets even more interesting. America's biggest weapon in sanctions is not only its navy or diplomacy, but the dollar-based financial system. If a payment moves in dollars, passes through a US-linked bank, or shows up in the correspondent banking chain, Washington can track it and choke it. But part of Iranian oil trade moves through yuan, smaller Chinese banks, obscure intermediaries, barter-style arrangements, and informal settlement channels. According to Wall Street Journal reporting, smaller Chinese banks and sanctioned institutions such as Bank of Kunlun have played a role in facilitating this trade, while barter deals and infrastructure-linked payments have also been used. The direct meaning of this is, America may be able to see the oil flow, but it cannot stop every payment as easily as it can through conventional dollar routes. This is the point where the question, why is America helpless, is born. Helplessness does not mean America can do nothing at all. It imposes sanctions, blacklists tankers, takes action against entities, and in February 2nd, 2026, it also sanctioned 15 entities and 14 shadow fleet vessels. But the problem is that this network is not static. It is fluid. One ship gets blacklisted, another appears. One company gets caught, the front changes. One insurer steps away, some smaller obscure insurer comes in. Reuters' October 2nd, 2025 investigation showed that sanctioned Russian and Iranian oil flows even received support from a small New Zealand insurer. In other words, the global enforcement system is as formal as the evasion network is improvisational. That asymmetry is what frustrates America. And it is not just the ships. Behind them, there is also a shadow banking-style financial web. Public reporting and policy papers have repeatedly pointed out that through front companies, intermediaries, small brokers, trading houses, and layers of documentation in Dubai, Hong Kong, Turkey, and other commercial hubs, payment and ownership trails are deliberately muddied. The USCC fact sheet of March 2nd, 2026 also mentioned that Iranian oil transactions were facilitated through Chinese banks, front companies, and intermediary firms. This does not mean that every company is illegal. It means that the sanctions evasion ecosystem operates by hiding behind legitimate-looking paperwork. One company creates the invoice, another handles shipping, a third handles storage, a fourth handles insurance, a fifth handles settlement. From the outside, it looks like normal trade. From the inside, it is a sanctions maze. But is oil the only lifeline of Iran? No. Oil is the biggest source, but not the only one. Crypto has also become an important layer. Reuters reported in February 2nd, 2026 crypto activity in Iran has grown rapidly, and US investigators were examining whether specific platforms had been facilitating sanctions evasion. According to TRM Labs, Iran saw about $10 billion in crypto activity during 2025, while Chainalysis said Iranian wallets received a record $7.8 billion in 2025. This does not directly prove that all of that money went into state use, but it certainly shows that sanctions pressure has turned crypto into a serious parallel financial channel in Iran. And in a Reuters report from 2021, based on a blockchain study, it was also said that Iran-based miners could be paid in Bitcoin, which could then be used for imports, creating a route that bypasses Iranian financial institutions. Behind this crypto angle, there is also an energy story. According to the US Energy Information Administration, Iran has been the world's third largest producer of dry natural gas, and it holds very large hydrocarbon reserves. The EIA also says that Iran has a share in some of the world's largest proven crude oil reserves. When a sanctioned economy has abundant gas and oil, it can in one way or another support routes like crypto mining through electricity subsidies, industrial diversion, and low-cost power. Of course, Iran has also seen mining bans and power cut concerns. But the larger point is that sanctions pushed Tehran toward alternative settlement ecosystems, and crypto became one of them. Now also understand the scale of Iran's economy, because that makes this whole story even more dramatic. According to World Bank data, Iran's GDP in 2024 was around $437 billion. According to Trading Economics, using IMF-sourced estimates, Iran's government debt-to-GDP ratio in 2024 was around 37%. On the other hand, the US economy is many times larger, and compared to that, Iran's nominal economic size is very small. That is why when a country with such a small economy still does not collapse despite enduring ongoing regional confrontation, analysts begin looking less at its visible GDP and more at its hidden revenue arteries. Oil discounts, sanctions evasion routes, non-dollar settlements, crypto usage, commodity exports, regional trade, and informal finance. In other words, Iran's story is not just the story of how big the country is, but of how many routes make survival possible. And Iran has not only oil, but also unique agricultural strength. According to FAO-backed materials and UN-linked reporting, Iran is the global leader in saffron production and produces around 85 to 90% of the world's saffron. Pistachio is also one of its iconic export crops, and FAO materials focused on Iran document special work on improving pistachio production and exports. That means even amid sanctions, Iran still has some high-value niche exports that carry a premium identity in global markets. The Guardian also recently showed that the Hormuz crisis affected pistachio and saffron supplies in countries like the UK. That means these products are not just cultural symbols, but also niche hard currency earning assets. But again, the same question. If America is so powerful, why does it not simply stop all this? The answer lies in geopolitics. The first reason is that sanctions are most effective only when major buyers cooperate. If China remains the dominant buyer of Iranian oil, then the pressure gets diluted. Second, global shipping is deeply fragmented. Webs of ownership, flag registries, insurers, brokers, shell entities, and secondary traders create so many layers that real-time enforcement is always incomplete. Third, the energy market has its own compulsive logic. If discounted crude is available, some buyers take the risk because of economic incentive. Fourth, a full blockade or aggressive interdiction could turn escalation directly into military conflict, and the cost of that could be enormous. IMF, and recent war-related reporting collectively show that even limited Middle East disruption has put major pressure on oil prices, inflation, supply chains, and global growth. That means any attempt to choke Iran could itself shock the world economy. This paradox is what makes the story so fascinating. America has the strongest navy, the most powerful sanctions architecture, and a deep grip on global finance. And yet a sanctioned state like Iran has written for itself a survival manual in which old tankers, hidden ownership, fake paperwork, geo-spoofing, ship-to-ship transfers, yuan settlements, front companies, barter, crypto, and commodity exports all connect with one another. From the outside,
it looks like patchwork. But together, that same patchwork becomes cash flow. Perhaps that is why Reuters wrote in January 2nd, 25 that Iran had built a roaring global trade for its oil. In other words, sanctions were meant to choke it, but when the road was blocked, Tehran dug a tunnel. And the most uncomfortable truth in this story is that these ghost ships are not just symbols of Iran's ingenuity, but also a mirror of the limits of global enforcement. They tell us how difficult it is to completely shut down trade in the 21st century. If a country has resources, willing buyers, risk-tolerant intermediaries, and a gray zone logistics network, then it can create breathing space even outside the formal system. That breathing space is not perfect. It is expensive, full of leakages, and runs on discounts. But it still provides survival. And that survival keeps Iran standing not just on the battlefield, but on the balance sheet too. So in the end, how is Iran's treasury filling up overnight? The answer does not fit into one line. It exists in the dark fleet, in discounted crude going to China, in teapot refiners, in yuan settlements, in shadow banking channels, in crypto activity, and in those niche exports that quietly keep earning money amid all the noise of sanctions. America appears helpless not because it lacks power, but because in a modern sanctions war, power and control are no longer the same thing. You can create pressure, but you cannot seal every leak. You can track ships, but you cannot stop every voyage. You can punish banks, but you cannot erase every informal settlement. And as long as this gap remains between energy, commerce, and geopolitics, some ships will keep floating across the sea just like this, sometimes visible on the screen, sometimes disappearing, and in the darkness of night, quietly giving oxygen to a country's economy.
If this video has taught you something new, or if you feel this information should reach more people, don't forget to like and share the video. Your small share can become valuable and useful information for someone else. If you have any questions related to this topic, or if you would like to share your opinion with us, be sure to write in the comment box. We read every question and suggestion from you, because your feedback inspires us to create better content. And if you want to keep receiving such interesting and reliable information about business, the economy, and the world in the future, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel GRT Business and also press the bell icon so that you get notifications of every new video directly. At GRT Business, we always strive to provide you with accurate, balanced, and reliable information. Our news and analysis are prepared based on information obtained from various news agencies, public sources, and public opinion. We make every effort to verify and validate each fact as much as possible. But in case of any possible error or dispute, the responsibility lies with the respective sources. Our only aim is to present you with a correct and trustworthy perspective so that you can understand any topic better.